The quiet boss and the kind guard. The city lights, a shimmering mosaic against the velvet expanse of night, offered no solace to the cavernous office where Harrison Thorne resided. His custom-fabricated wheelchair, a testament to both his affluence and his confinement, was positioned before the panoramic window. 3 years had passed since the world fractured beneath him, since the engine's roar gave way to screaming metal, and fluid motion yielded to the tyranny of immobility. Though the accident had stripped much away, his intellect remained unyielding. Thorne Industries, his corporate empire, still ascended, a monument to his sharp mind, yet an endless fount of bitter irony. He, the architect of commercial dynasties, was a captive within his own flesh. A half-empty tumbler of amber liquid gleamed on the polished mahogany, mirroring the distant urban haze. Solitude, a frigid companion, hummed beneath the surface of his carefully constructed composure. His jaw was clenched, a familiar tension. He idly traced the rim of the glass, the vast office's silence amplifying the faint whir of his chair's mechanisms. The colossal weight of his existence, both professional and personal, bore down, an unseen, crushing force. Downstairs, in the hushed, expansive lobby of Thorne Tower, Leo Maxwell commenced his nightly rounds. The building's silence at this hour held a different quality. A tranquil hush, punctuated only by the soft cadence of his practical shoes on the marble. His crisp navy uniform felt like a second skin. He adjusted his cap's brim and surveyed the first floor's perimeter, his gaze meticulously sweeping every shadow, every closed portal. His thoughts, however, often strayed from security protocols to Lily. Her bright, inquisitive eyes, her infectious giggle, the meticulous way she arranged her small menagerie of plastic animals before bed, a faded photograph in his wallet, nestled beside his ID, captured her beaming, clutching a slightly deflated balloon. She yearned for a dollhouse, a proper one, not the makeshift cardboard creation they'd fashioned last weekend. One with miniature furniture and tiny chandeliers. He'd glimpsed such a magnificent edifice in a toy store window, a treasure that cost more than a week's wages. A quiet sigh escaped him. He valued his job, the steady income, the stability it afforded. But sometimes, contemplating Lily's small, earnest desires, his chest ached with a profound longing to give her more, to imbue her world with the kind of boundless joy he felt she deserved. Leo continued his patrol, moving with practiced efficiency through the silent corridors. The building was a labyrinth of wealth and ambition. He, the humble night guard, its quiet guardian. He concluded with the executive floors, a routine honed over the past year. As he approached the elevator bank on the uppermost floor, the doors chimed softly, revealing Mr. Harrison Thorne. It was exceptionally late, even for the CEO. Leo often noted lights blazing in the penthouse office long after midnight, a silent testament to the man's relentless drive. Tonight, however, Mr. Thorne's usual stern facade seemed to falter. His shoulders slumped, his gaze distant, fixed on some unseen point beyond the elevator's polished chrome. The lines around his eyes were etched deeper, speaking not just of age, but of profound weariness. His fingers, typically poised with executive authority, rested limply in his lap. He appeared utterly desolate, a solitary figure adrift in the sterile glow of the elevator's interior. Leo, a man of natural perceptiveness, felt a pang of something akin to empathy. He'd never exchanged more than a polite nod with Mr. Thorne, the CEO's aura of quiet power and personal tragedy, creating an almost impenetrable barrier. But in that fleeting moment, as the doors slowly closed Leo glimpsed beyond the expensive suit, the custom chair, and the veneer of corporate might. He saw a man burdened, weighed down by something far heavier than quarterly reports or stock prices. The image lingered in his mind as he resumed his rounds, the metallic echo of the elevator chime fading into the building's vast emptiness. He thought of Lily again, her bright, unburdened spirit, the simple delight a new toy could spark. He considered his own quiet hopes for her future, and then, surprisingly, his thoughts drifted back to the lonely man in the wheelchair, a silent echo of shared human vulnerability at the heart of the imposing tower. He watched the security monitors, a grid of silent surveillance, as Mr. Harrison's sleek black car receded from the main entrance, its taillights glowing like dying embers in the pre-dawn gloom. The lobby was now utterly deserted, save for Leo and the distant hum of the building's systems. He sighed, stretched, and resumed his slow, deliberate pace. Another night drew to a close. Another day of quiet dedication, of dreams for a small girl, and an almost imperceptible connection with a man who, despite his immense wealth and power, seemed to navigate a similar, profound solitude. The thought was fleeting, dismissed as quickly as it arose. His focus returned to the polished floors, the locked doors, the quiet responsibility of his job. The world of Thorn Industries, with its intricate web of power and sorrow, continued its turning, oblivious to the small, hopeful dreams of its kind night guard. A stormy night's call, the city's luminous profile, typically a gleaming testament to human ingenuity, blurred into a chaotic canvas of grey and purple as the storm front descended. Rain lashed against Thorn Industries' towering windows, each gust a physical assault that rattled the very foundations. Inside, the usual late-night mechanical hum and monitor glow gradually succumbed to the primal roar outside. Harrison, still immersed in his office, had been lost in the intricate blueprints of a new educational toy. Its gears and circuits a welcome diversion from the deepening gloom within his own mind. He'd barely noted the skies darkening. So cocooned was he in his corporate world's climate-controlled bubble. A sudden, sharp crack of lightning briefly bleached his office in stark white, followed almost immediately by a thunderclap that resonated through the floor. The lights flickered, a desperate dying dance, before plunging the entire building into an oppressive, absolute darkness. The air conditioner, the soft whir of his computer, even the faint buzz of the power outlets, all fell silent. The abrupt void of sound was nearly as disorienting as the visual blackout. A jolt of alarm, a cold dread, seeped into Harrison. His specialized wheelchair, a marvel of engineering designed for seamless navigation, was now a heavy, inert shell. Its advanced systems, usually responsive to the slightest command, were utterly lifeless without power. He tried voice activation. A soft, almost whispered "lights on," but only the storm's deafening quiet answered. He fumbled in the thick darkness for the emergency call button on his desk, but it too was dead. The irony gnawed at him. A man who commanded an empire, now utterly at the mercy of a power outage. A heavy sigh of resignation escaped him. He was alone, completely stranded. Meanwhile, Leo Maxwell was on his routine rounds, his flashlight beam carving a solitary path through Thorn Tower's labyrinthine corridors. The storm's fury was palpable, even within the reinforced walls. The building groaned under the onslaught. He'd heard the distant rumble of thunder growing steadily louder, felt the vibrations of the wind, but the sudden total power failure had caught him off guard. His sturdy, reliable flashlight became his sole companion in the inky blackness. He navigated by memory, his footsteps echoing unnervingly on the usually bustling floors. His first priority was checking the main circuit breakers, then ensuring all emergency exits were clear. He moved with practiced efficiency, his mind, however, still drifting to Lily and her innocent joy over a simple drawing. He mentally catalogued potential hazards, sudden temperature drops, the eerie silence broken only by the tempest's cacophony. As he neared the executive suites on the upper floors, a faint sound, almost swallowed by the wind and rain, pricked his ears. He paused, holding his breath, straining to discern it from the storm's natural symphony. It was a voice, distant and muffled, but unmistakably human. A call for help, tinged with a desperation that cut through the storm's roar. He swung his flashlight towards the sound, the beam dancing across the closed doors of the executive offices. It seemed to emanate from Mr. Thorne's office, a place usually sacrosanct and unoccupied after hours. Leo hesitated, a flicker of professional decorum warring with the urgent plea he'd just heard. Mr. Thorne rarely stayed late, and even more rarely would he be in need of assistance. But the sound had been undeniable, a fragile thread of human vulnerability in the vast, dark building. Without another thought, Leo quickened his pace, his heart thudding against his ribs. The call for help was faint, but insistent, and he knew, with sudden certainty, that he had to answer. He reached the heavy oak door of Thorne's office and tried the handle. Locked. He rapped sharply, his voice cutting through the remaining distance. "Mr. Thorne, is everything all right in there? This is Leo, the night guard." He waited, the silence stretching, broken only by the persistent drumming of the rain. Then, a slightly stronger, more urgent voice from within, a voice stripped of its usual corporate polish, replied, "Maxwell. Yes, I'm stuck. The power's out and I can't move my chair. Can you get in here?" Leo felt a surge of adrenaline. He'd never heard Mr. Thorne sound so human, so vulnerable. He knew the protocol for such situations, but the urgency in the CEO's voice pushed him past the usual bureaucratic steps. He knew there was an emergency key override panel, hidden beside the door frame. His fingers, guided by instinct, found the small, almost invisible indentation. He pressed it, heard a soft click, and pushed the door open, the flashlight beam piercing the inky blackness of the expansive office. Light in the dark. The beam of Leo's flashlight cut a swath through the inky blackness of the executive floor, illuminating the polished wood paneling and the silent, ominous doorways. Each click of his boot on the marble floor echoed in the oppressive quiet, a stark contrast to the usual hum of Thorne Industries. He reached Thorne's office, the heavy oak door now slightly ajar from his previous intervention. Taking a deep breath, Leo pushed it open further, the faint glow from his flashlight barely piercing the gloom within. "Mr. Thorne?" Leo's voice was a low rumble, deferential but firm. A sigh of relief, audible even over the distant howl of the wind, answered him. "Maxwell, thank the stars." Leo found Harrison Thorne exactly where he'd left him, slumped slightly in his inert wheelchair, his face a pale mask in the dim light. The CEO looked less like a titan of industry and more like a man utterly spent. "Are you all right, sir? We need to get you somewhere safe, away from the windows." I can't move this chair, Leo," Thorne admitted, his voice tight with frustration and a hint of something raw that Leo hadn't expected. "It's completely dead." Understanding dawned on Leo. This wasn't just about darkness. It was about immobility, about vulnerability. All right, Mr. Thorne, I'll help you. Moving with a practiced ease born from years of lifting heavy equipment and more recently a growing daughter, Leo carefully positioned himself behind Thorne's chair. He braced himself, a grunt escaping him as he strained. The specialized wheelchair was heavier than it looked, packed with dormant technology. Slowly, with deliberate measured effort, he began to push. The wheels, unpowered, scraped faintly against the thick carpet. "Easy, Maxwell, easy," Thorne murmured, a tremor in his voice. "Just hold on, sir," Leo grunted, sweat beading on his forehead. He navigated the chair away from the expansive, storm-lashed windows, guiding it toward the inner corridor, away from the immediate threat. He found a sturdy, leather-bound visitor's chair near a reinforced wall, relatively shielded from the elements. "Can you transfer here, sir?" Harrison nodded, his movements stiff. With Leo's steadying arm, he painstakingly shifted from his wheelchair to the visitor's chair, a grimace of effort on his face. Once settled, he leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Thank you, Leo. Truly." Leo gave a quick, reassuring nod. "No problem, Mr. Thorne. We'll just wait here until the power comes back on, or until the emergency crew arrives." He cast his flashlight beam around, ensuring no immediate hazards. The building groaned and shuddered around them, the storm still raging outside. But in their small, illuminated bubble, a fragile sense of calm began to settle. The silence that followed stretched, punctuated only by the storm's fury. Harrison Thorne, usually a figure of imposing authority, now seemed smaller, less formidable in the darkness. He cleared his throat. "So, Leo, you mentioned a daughter earlier. Lily, wasn't it?" Leo's face softened immediately. "That's right, sir. Lily. She's my world." He paused, then chuckled. "She's got a personality bigger than she is, always getting into something." "Oh?" Thorne prompted, a flicker of genuine curiosity in his eyes. "Yeah, just last week, she decided her stuffed unicorn, Sparkles, needed a bath in the dog's water bowl. Sparkles wasn't too happy about it, and neither was Buster, the dog." Leo smiled, the memory warming him. "She tried to dry Sparkles in the microwave. Had to explain that one carefully." Thorne let out a soft, surprised laugh, a sound that seemed to chase some of the gloom from the air. "A microwave? Ingenious." "Yeah, if you're a 5-year-old with a soggy unicorn. She loves her toys though, especially anything with glitter or a squeaker. You should see her collection. It takes up half her bedroom." Leo's voice was infused with an easy affection that painted vivid pictures in the dark. "She talks to them too, gives them all elaborate backstories. Sparkles, apparently, is a secret agent, tasked with protecting the cookies in the pantry." Harrison listened, a faint smile playing on his lips. The storm outside seemed to recede, replaced by the gentle rhythm of Leo's storytelling. A secret agent unicorn. That's quite the imagination. It is, and she uses it to get out of anything. Tried to convince me last night that it was Sparkles' bedtime, not hers, so I should read the story. Leo shook his head, a fond exasperation in his tone. "She's a clever one. Always has me wrapped around her little finger." A moment of quiet contemplation settled between them. The wind outside howled, but inside, the shared space felt surprisingly cozy. Thorne looked at Leo, a new light in his eyes, a softening around the edges that hadn't been there before. "It sounds like she brings a lot of joy into your life, Leo." "She does, Mr. Thorne, more than I ever thought possible." Leo glanced at his watch. The small digital display, a tiny beacon. She's the reason I do everything I do. A spark of laughter. She sounds imaginative, Mr. Harrison offered, the words a little stiff, as if he hadn't used that particular adjective in years. The wind outside howled, rattling the reinforced glass of the CEO's office. Leo, now perched on the edge of the large, sturdy mahogany desk, his flashlight beam dancing across the room like a nervous firefly, grinned. "Oh, she's a force of nature, sir. Just last week, she decided the dust bunnies under her bed were actually fuzzy guardians of the dream realm, and insisted I couldn't vacuum them up because it would disrupt their vital slumber. She even made them little hats out of tissue paper." Leo chuckled, the sound warm and genuine in the cavernous office. He glanced at Mr. Harrison, expecting perhaps a polite, strained smile, or more likely, a dismissive wave. Instead, he saw a flicker of something in the CEO's eyes, not quite amusement, but a distinct shift from his usual somber intensity. "Hats?" Mr. Harrison repeated, a faint, almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of his lips. "Little conical things. One even had a feather, or what she called a feather. It was actually a stray thread from her blanket. She takes her world building very seriously." Leo paused, then leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "The best part? She tried to convince her kindergarten teacher that the classroom gerbil was a noble steed, awaiting its miniature knight. Said it was practicing its trot. Mrs. Gable just blinked at me during pick-up. A low sound rumbled in Mr. Harrison's chest. It started as a hesitant cough, then morphed into something lighter, something that hadn't echoed in these executive halls in years. A genuine, unbidden laugh. It was a rusty sound at first, a little rough, but it grew, catching him by surprise. His head tilted back slightly, and the corners of his eyes crinkled. It wasn't a boisterous guffaw, but a quiet, heartfelt release of mirth. Leo watched, dumbfounded for a second. Then a wide smile spread across his face. He'd never heard Mr. Harrison laugh, never even imagined it. The sound was infectious, and Leo found himself laughing too, not just at the memory of Lily's gerbil antics, but at the sheer, unexpected joy of seeing Mr. Harrison genuinely amused. The storm outside seemed to fade into the background for a moment, replaced by the unexpected warmth of shared laughter. "A noble steed," Mr. Harrison managed to gasp, wiping a tear from his eye. I imagine Mrs. Gable had quite the story for her husband that evening. "Oh, I'm sure she did. Lily has a way of leaving an impression," Leo confirmed, feeling a strange lightness in the room that hadn't been there before. The tension, the weight of their precarious situation seemed to lift, if only for a few precious minutes. Just then, a faint hum began, low and vibrating through the floor. The emergency lights, which had been a dull, sickly yellow, flickered once, then burst into full, brilliant white. The air conditioning whirred to life with a sudden gust. Outside, the storm still raged, but inside, the world had been abruptly restored. Mr. Harrison blinked, the smile still lingering, but a more familiar mask of composure already beginning to settle over his features. "It appears our impromptu storytelling session has come to an end, Mr. Maxwell." Leo pushed off the desk, his flashlight now obsolete. "Looks like it, sir. Glad to see the power's back on." He felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name, a strange wistfulness. The moment of connection, of shared humanity, was already receding. Indeed. Mr. Harrison pressed a button on the arm of his chair, and the motorized device hummed to life. "Thank you, Mr. Maxwell, for Everything. You handled this situation with remarkable competence. Just doing my job, sir. Leo offered a small, respectful nod. I'll go check on the other floors now that things are back online. As Leo turned to leave, Mr. Harrison's voice stopped him. Mr. Maxwell? Leo paused, looking back. Yes, sir? Tell Lily, the fuzzy guardians of the dream realm are safe tonight. And the noble steed. I trust it performed admirably. There was a subtle glint in his eye, a ghost of the earlier mirth. A wide smile broke across Leo's face. I'll tell her, sir. She'll be thrilled. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a sky of brilliant, washed-clean blue. Harrison Thorne sat in his office, the cityscape sprawling beneath him, bathed in sunlight. He usually found solace in the quiet solitude of his mornings, but today the silence felt different. It echoed with a sound he hadn't heard in years, his own laughter. He remembered the rusty, almost painful sensation in his chest, followed by the unexpected release. He remembered Leo's open, honest smile, the genuine warmth in his voice as he spoke of his daughter. Harrison had always considered employees as cogs in a machine, necessary but ultimately interchangeable. Leo had shattered that perception with his candor, his resourcefulness, and his unpretentious humanity. The memory of Lily's tissue paper hats and the noble steed gerbil brought another softer smile to his lips. He found himself wondering what other fantastical tales Lily wove. It was a curious thought, a foreign one, and it lingered with him long after his assistant, Ms. Albright, brought in his morning coffee. The world, which had often felt like a grey, unyielding landscape, now held a faint, unexpected spark of colour, and it was all thanks to a night guard, a little girl, and a very silly gerbil. Watching and waiting. The memory of Lily's sparkle puff and Leo's booming laugh resonated in Harrison's mind long after the lights flickered back on. The following days at Thorne Industries felt different. The sterile hum of the air conditioning, the hushed clatter of keyboards, all seemed to possess a new, almost vibrant quality. Harrison, usually ensconced in his corner office, found himself taking detours, his powerful electric wheelchair gliding silently through the polished corridors. He wasn't actively seeking Leo out. Not at first, but rather he was observing. He started noticing Leo on his daytime rounds. The night guard, a sturdy man with kind eyes and a perpetually rumpled uniform, had a way of moving through the building that suggested a deeper connection than mere employment. One afternoon, Harrison watched from a discreet distance as a new intern struggled to operate the notoriously finicky coffee machine in the break room. Steam hissed erratically, and the intern's face was a mask of panic. Leo, passing by, paused. Without a word, he deftly adjusted a lever, tapped a gauge, and soon, a steady stream of dark liquid flowed into the waiting mug. He offered a reassuring smile and a quiet, "Happens to the best of us," before continuing his patrol. Another time, Harrison saw Leo patiently guiding an elderly delivery driver through the labyrinthine loading dock. The driver, visibly flustered by the intricate layout, kept losing his way. Leo didn't rush him, didn't show an ounce of irritation. Instead, he walked beside the man, pointing out landmarks, even holding open a heavy steel door that usually required a considerable shove. It was a small gesture, easily overlooked, yet it spoke volumes about the man's innate helpfulness. Harrison found himself reflecting on the countless times he'd witnessed similar, almost imperceptible acts of kindness from Leo. He'd simply never seen them before. His own world had been so rigidly confined by his condition, by the cold efficiency of his corporate empire. that such gentle human connections had blurred into the background. The shift in Harrison's perception was subtle, almost imperceptible to anyone but himself. He started greeting other employees with a nod, sometimes even a brief, "Good morning." The responses, initially surprised and tentative, gradually warmed. He found himself almost anticipating Leo's presence, a quiet hum of expectation that was utterly foreign to his previously detached existence. Then, his world began to contract again. The specially designed wheelchair, a marvel of German engineering that had been his legs for 3 years, started to protest. It began subtly, a faint metallic whine that underscored its usually silent glide. Harrison initially dismissed it as a quirk, a minor adjustment needed, but the whine grew louder, more insistent, like a disgruntled beast. One morning, as he navigated a gentle slope leading to the executive floor, the chair shuddered. The usually smooth ascent became a jerky, stuttering climb. He pressed the joystick, coaxing it forward, but the wheels seemed to catch, emitting a grinding sound that grated on his nerves. He felt a surge of familiar frustration, a hot wave of helplessness. He'd grown so accustomed to the chair's effortless responsiveness, its seamless integration into his daily life, that this sudden rebellion felt like a personal betrayal. Later that day, attempting to retrieve a file from a lower drawer in his office, the chair's power suddenly cut out. He was left marooned, a few inches shy of his objective, the hum of the chair replaced by an unnerving silence. He jabbed the power button repeatedly, his jaw clenched, but nothing. He felt the familiar prickle of sweat on his brow, the tightening in his chest. His independence, already so meticulously negotiated, felt suddenly precarious. The chair, once an extension of his will, was now a stubborn, unyielding impediment. He finally managed to reboot it after several frustrating minutes, but the incident left a bitter taste. He pushed the thought of a complete breakdown away, refusing to acknowledge the chilling implications. He was Harrison Thorne, CEO of Thorne Industries. Problems were solved, not endured. Yet, as the days wore on, the chair's malfunctions became more frequent, more pronounced. It would seize up mid-corridor, forcing him to wait, a silent, immobile statue in the bustling thoroughfare. The occasional sympathetic glances from passing employees, usually unnoticed, now felt like pity, a stark reminder of his vulnerability. The grinding noises grew louder, more ominous. The smooth turns became jarring lurches. He tried to ignore it, to will it into submission, but the chair had a will of its own now. It was failing, slowly but undeniably, and with each new shudder, each unexpected stop, a cold dread began to settle in Harrison's stomach. The small, nascent warmth that had begun to bloom after his encounter with Leo felt threatened, overshadowed by the looming spectre of greater physical restriction. He needed his chair. He depended on it for everything, for his work, for his dignity, for his carefully constructed semblance of normalcy. And now, it was abandoning him. The fixer's touch. The hum of the fluorescent lights usually provided a comforting backdrop to Leo's nightly rounds, a low thrum against the rhythmic thump-thump of his own boots on polished marble. Tonight, however, an additional, more discordant sound threaded its way through the quiet. It was a sporadic, strained whirring, almost a mechanical groan, emanating from the direction of Mr. Harrison Thorne's usually silent, efficient office. Leo paused, flashlight beam cutting a swathe through the gloom, casting stark shadows on the pristine walls. He'd seen Mr. Thorne's specialised chair stuttering more often lately, a subtle hiccup in its graceful glide, a tremor in its usually unwavering power. he found Mr. Thorne attempting to maneuver away from his massive dark wood desk, a frustrated sigh escaping his lips as the wheelchair shuddered, then lurched forward a few inches before seizing again. The CEO's knuckles were white as he gripped the joystick, his gaze fixed on the obstinate machine. The usual meticulous precision of his movements was replaced by a hesitant, almost jerky manipulation. The sleek, powerful chair, an extension of Mr. Thorne's will, was failing him, and a shadow of deep annoyance, bordering on despair, flickered across his face. "Everything all right, Mr. Thorne?" Leo's voice was softer than usual, a gentle inquiry rather than a formal address. He approached cautiously, not wanting to startle the man. Mr. Thorne's head snapped up, his expression guarded. "Just a minor technical glitch," he replied, a clipped edge to his words that didn't quite mask the underlying frustration. He tried the joystick again, and the chair emitted a pained, grating sound, refusing to budge. Leo's eyes, trained to spot anomalies, quickly scanned the chair. He noticed a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the rear wheel, a slight vibration that spoke of underlying mechanical strain. "Looks like it's giving you some trouble, sir," he observed, his tone empathetic. He hesitated, then took a small, bold step forward. "If you don't mind me saying, I've got a bit of a knack for fixing things. Grew up on a farm, you know. Always something breaking down. Tractors, pumps, even old washing machines. Might be able to take a look if you'd allow it." Mr. Thorne's gaze narrowed, a mixture of surprise and skepticism playing across his features. His chair was a marvel of engineering, a bespoke device maintained by a team of highly specialized technicians. The notion of a night guard, no matter how well-meaning, offering to tinker with it was frankly preposterous. Yet, the chair remained stubbornly immobile, and the thought of calling the emergency service at this late hour, only to be told it was a minor issue, chafed at his pride. And there was something in Leo's earnest gaze, a genuine desire to help, that disarmed him. You think you could?" Mr. Thorne asked, the words tinged with disbelief. He looked down at the unresponsive chair, then back at Leo. A flicker of something new, perhaps desperation, perhaps curiosity, crossed his face. "It's quite complex, I assure you." "No harm in looking, sir," Leo said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Sometimes the simplest things cause the biggest headaches." After a moment's internal debate, a battle between his ingrained fastidiousness and his growing appreciation for Leo, Mr. Thorne nodded curtly. "Very well, Maxwell. See what you can do. Just be careful. It's an expensive piece of equipment." Leo knelt, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He didn't immediately reach for tools. Instead, he ran his hand along the chair's sleek frame, feeling for vibrations, listening intently to the subtle, mechanical murmurs. He gently tilted the chair back slightly, examining the underside with the beam of his flashlight. His fingers, surprisingly deft, probed around the intricate wiring, the subtle twists and turns of the power conduits. He paid particular attention to the areas where the chair's components connected, the junctions where power flowed. "Uh-huh," he murmured, a note of quiet satisfaction in his voice. His flashlight beam settled on a small, almost hidden panel near the main power source. With a gentle twist, he opened it, revealing a nest of wires. One, a thin, red cable, was slightly askew, barely connected to its terminal. It wasn't completely detached, which explained the intermittent functionality, but it was enough to disrupt the flow. "Found it," Leo announced, looking up at Mr. Thorne. "Loose connection, sir. Nothing major, but it'll stop it dead every time." He retrieved a small multi-tool from his belt, a utilitarian device he carried for various minor repairs on his rounds. With delicate precision, he nudged the errant wire back into place, securing it firmly. He then closed the panel, giving it a reassuring tap. "Try it now, Mr. Thorne," he suggested, stepping back slightly. Mr. Thorne, his eyes wide with a blend of apprehension and faint hope, gripped the joystick. He pushed it forward, and this time, the chair responded instantly, smoothly, without a single stutter or groan. The gentle whirring of the motor was back to its familiar, efficient purr. He guided it around his office, a small, involuntary smile touching his lips. The relief that washed over him was immense, a wave of warmth dispelling the chill of his earlier frustration. He looked at Leo, a genuine sense of gratitude replacing his initial surprise. "Maxwell," he said, his voice softer than before, "you fixed it." A tingle of hope. The hum of the wheelchair was now a steady, almost imperceptible whisper. Thorne, still slightly disoriented by the abrupt return of power and the rhythmic thrum of the emergency generator, tentatively nudged the joystick. The chair responded with an immediate, fluid grace that had been absent for months. It glided across the polished marble floor of the executive corridor, a silent predator rather than the groaning beast it had become. A deep sigh of relief escaped his lips, a sound so profound it felt like an exhalation of all the frustration and helplessness he'd endured. "You fixed it," Thorne said, his voice laced with a genuine awe that surprised even himself. He looked at Leo, who was now meticulously coiling the small length of wire he'd used, his flashlight beam dancing across the industrial-grade carpet. Leo merely offered a small, satisfied nod. "Just a loose connection, Mr. Thorne. Happens to the best of us." He didn't preen or seek accolades, simply moved with the quiet efficiency of a man accustomed to practical solutions. Thorne, however, found himself staring at his legs, a strange, almost foreign sensation blossoming within them. It wasn't pain, nor was it the usual dull ache that had become his constant companion. It was a tingle, a faint prickling sensation, like the ghostly echo of pins and needles, yet different. It was subtle, barely there, but unmistakable. He wiggled his toes inside his polished leather shoes, a habit he'd long given up on, expecting nothing. But there it was again, a whisper of sensation, a phantom tickle that sent a jolt of something akin to surprise, then wonder, up his spine. He tried to recall the last time he'd felt anything other than a vague sense of heaviness below the waist. 3 years. 3 years since the accident. Since the crushing weight of twisted metal had stolen the simple miracle of movement. His doctors, a succession of earnest but ultimately resigned specialists, had spoken in hushed tones of nerve damage, of permanent impairment. They'd given him exercises, a monotonous routine of stretches and isometric contractions, which he'd performed with a grim, unyielding discipline, born of desperation, but always without sensation. Eventually, the lack of results had worn down even his formidable will, and the exercises had become an infrequent, half-hearted ritual, then a distant memory. But now, with the smooth, silent glide of the repaired chair and the strange, unexpected tingle in his legs, a forgotten ember flickered within him. He closed his eyes, concentrating, willing the sensation to intensify. It didn't, but it also didn't disappear. It remained, a tiny, defiant spark in the vast emptiness of his lower limbs. He opened his eyes, a new resolve hardening his jaw. He remembered Dr. Aris's words, a quiet insistence on maintaining muscle tone, even without sensation, for the possibility of future advancements. Thorne had dismissed it then, a platitude offered to temper despair. Now those words resonated with a new, almost urgent meaning. "Mr. Thorne, are you all right?" Leo's voice cut through his reverie, a note of concern in his tone. He'd noticed Thorne's sudden stillness, the intensity in his gaze. Thorne shook his head, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "Yes, Leo. I'm quite all right. More than all right, in fact." He took a deep breath, the scent of ozone from the generator mingling with the faint, sterile scent of the office. He positioned the wheelchair, aligning it with the long, empty corridor. His hands found the armrests, his fingers pressing into the cool, smooth material. He remembered the first exercise, plantar flexion, pushing his toes down as if depressing a pedal. He strained, visualizing the muscles contracting, picturing the movement he couldn't see or feel, at least not in the traditional sense. But this time, it wasn't just a mental exercise. This time, there was that ghost of a tingle, a faint internal vibration that accompanied his effort. Then, dorsiflexion, pulling his toes up. Again, the subtle internal tremor. He moved to the next exercise, quadriceps contractions, attempting to tighten the muscles in his thighs. He focused, pushing past the years of learned helplessness, past the doctor's pronouncements, past his own resignation. The tingle, though still faint, was undeniably present, a tiny, insistent pulse that whispered of possibility. He continued, his movements slow, deliberate, each attempt a silent declaration of war against the inertia that had claimed his body for so long. He wasn't just going through the motions, he was actively searching for that elusive connection, that spark of life in limbs he'd considered dead. Leo watched him, a silent observer, sensing a shift, a profound change in the usually stoic CEO. He didn't interrupt, simply stood there, his flashlight beam momentarily still, illuminating the scene. The image of Harrison Thorne, a man of immense power and wealth, straining in his wheelchair in the pre-dawn quiet, a newfound determination etched on his face, was a powerful one. Thorne finished the sequence, a bead of sweat forming on his brow, not from physical exertion, but from the sheer mental effort. He looked up, catching Leo's gaze. "Thank you, Leo," he said again, his voice deeper now, imbued with a gravity that went beyond mere gratitude for a repaired chair. Truly. He knew it was a long shot, a flicker of hope that could easily be extinguished. But for the first time in years, Harrison Thorne felt a sense of purpose beyond the bottom line, a personal battle he was ready to fight with renewed vigor. The power outage, the broken wheelchair, Leo's unassuming kindness, they had all converged, creating a moment of unexpected revelation. The silence of the corridor was no longer empty. It was filled with the quiet resonance of a new beginning. The first stand, the faint tingling in his legs was a ghost of a memory, a sensation he hadn't dared to conjure in 3 years. But it was real, and it was enough. Harrison felt a surge of adrenaline, a raw, primal hope he'd long since buried under layers of corporate stoicism and medical prognoses. He needed to try. He had to try. He repositioned his feet, feeling the familiar weightlessness in his calves. But now, beneath it, a whisper of something more. He gripped the armrests of his freshly repaired chair, the smooth, cool metal a grounding presence. His breath hitched in his throat. He thought of Leo, of the gentle, persistent kindness that had chipped away at his carefully constructed isolation, of the impossible repair that had led to this impossible sensation. Leo's unwavering belief, even in the face of Harrison's own despair, had planted a seed. Now, Harrison had to nurture it. He pushed. It was an effort of sheer will, a desperate, silent battle against gravity and years of atrophy. His muscles screamed in protest, unused to the command. Sweat beaded on his forehead, a cold clamminess that had nothing to do with the cool office air. He pushed harder, envisioning Leo's earnest face, his simple, profound stories, his hands deftly working on the wiring. That genuine warmth, that unexpected human connection, became the fuel. Inch by agonizing inch, his hips lifted from the cushion. The world tilted slightly. A groan escaped his lips, a sound of pure exertion. His knees wobbled, threatening to buckle, but he locked them, forcing them into a rigid line. His core, long dormant, ignited with a fiery ache. For a split second, a glorious, terrifying second, he was upright. He was standing. The sensation was overwhelming, a cacophony of pressure in his feet, a burning in his thighs, a dizzying rush of blood to his head. He swayed precariously, a redwood in a sudden gust of wind, his arms locked, his knuckles white against the armrests. He felt impossibly tall, a towering figure surveying his domain from a new vantage point. The desk in front of him, usually at eye level, was now below his chest. His office, once a cage, stretched out before him, vast and conquerable. Just then, a beam of light cut through the gloom of the hallway outside his open office door. Leo, on his rounds, hummed a tuneless melody, his flashlight bobbing rhythmically. He was approaching Harrison's office, checking each doorway as he passed. His humming stopped abruptly. The flashlight beam froze, illuminating Harrison's trembling form. A sharp gasp escaped Leo's lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. "Mr. Thorne!" The sudden voice, the unexpected sound, startled Harrison. His carefully balanced resolve wavered. His knees, already screaming, chose that moment to give out. He began to fall. A slow-motion collapse back towards the chair. Leo was there in an instant, moving with a speed Harrison hadn't expected from the usually unhurried night guard. Strong hands, surprisingly gentle, were on his shoulders, guiding him, easing him back into the familiar contours of his wheelchair. The descent was a blur of sensation. The jarring impact as he landed, the sudden warmth of Leo's hands, the overwhelming rush of relief and disappointment. He was sitting again, but he had stood. Leo knelt beside the chair, his face a mixture of awe and concern in the beam of his flashlight. His usually composed demeanor was shattered, replaced by wide, glistening eyes. "Mr. Thorne, you stood," he whispered, the words barely audible. Harrison could only nod, a profound, shuddering breath escaping his lungs. He felt a tremor start in his chest, spreading rapidly through his entire body. It wasn't the tremor of weakness, but of overwhelming emotion. The tears came unbidden, hot and stinging, tracing paths down his cheeks. He hadn't cried in years, not since the accident, not since the doctors had delivered their grim pronouncements. These were not tears of sorrow, but of pure, unadulterated joy, of a hope so fierce it physically hurt. I felt something, Leo," he choked out, his voice hoarse, thick with unshed emotion. After you fixed it, I felt it." He gestured vaguely towards his legs, still tingling, still holding the echoes of that impossible, glorious stand. Leo reached out, his hand hovering for a moment before gently clasping Harrison's arm. His grip was firm, supportive. "It's a miracle, Mr. Thorne," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. His eyes, now openly wet, met Harrison's. A real miracle. And in that moment, bathed in the soft glow of Leo's flashlight in the darkened office, Harrison Thorne, CEO, felt truly seen, truly understood. He had stood, and he would stand again. Steps towards tomorrow. The past few weeks had been a blur of sweat, grit, and an almost unbearable exhilaration. Harrison's days were now meticulously structured around his physical therapy. Gone were the hours spent confined to his office, only venturing out for necessary corporate engagements. Now, he was in the brightly lit, sterile environment of the rehabilitation centre, pushing boundaries he hadn't dared to dream of crossing mere months ago. "All right, Mr. Thorne, let's try for 5 more repetitions," Dr. Evans, his lead physical therapist, encouraged. Her voice a steady balm over the grunts Harrison couldn't quite suppress. He was pushing against a resistance band, his legs trembling with the effort. Every fibre in his muscles screamed, but a different kind of scream now. A scream of awakening, not of despair. He focused on the sensation, the burn, the faint echo of Leo's unwavering belief. "You'll stand again, Mr. Thorne. I just know it." His medical team, initially cautiously optimistic, were now openly astonished. Dr. Anya Sharma, his neurologist, had been particularly vocal. "Harrison, your nerve regeneration is remarkable. Statistically, after 3 years of complete paralysis below the T6 vertebra, this level of improvement is practically unheard of. Your resolve, coupled with whatever happened with your chair, has truly created a unique scenario." Harrison merely offered a tight, almost shy smile. He couldn't bring himself to explain the full, unbelievable truth to them. Not yet. How could he articulate the warmth that had bloomed from a simple act of kindness, leading to a miraculous repair that bypassed all scientific explanation? He simply said, "I have a lot to fight for now." And he did. He fought for the tingling that had blossomed into a dull ache, for the fleeting seconds of standing that he now chased with a relentless fervour. The incremental gains were Harrison's new currency. First, it was the ability to wiggle his toes, a movement so slight it was almost imperceptible.